tomorrow when you shop. See your next movie completely free.
And now, on with the show.
Alrighty, dudes and dudettes, welcome back to another episode of the Hill Valley AV Club. It's great to see you. Hope you guys are all doing super good. We're here again with another wonderful movie with a couple returning guests joining us again after our awesome review of Black Panther, which I think, I swear, is our best episode yet. It is really good. I listened to it. And I mean, I sometimes will do like checks to see like, okay, did it sound good? Did it make it to iTunes okay? Does it sound fine? But I just felt compelled to keep listening to it as I drove around. It's the first episode that's done that to me.
Oh, nice. Cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I just had to invite you guys back.
Part of that.
Yeah. So welcoming these guys back on their second appearance, the gaming author and Dorseus. Guys, thank you so much for coming back. I appreciate you. And joining us again as well, my brother-in-law and fellow community member, SteelManBat.
What's up?
Welcome back, dude. Good to see you. Good to see you.
Glad to be here.
Well, dudes, obviously this month, guys, we're going to be talking about Valerian, Luc Besson's colorful sci-fi epic.
Yes.
Which, emphasis on the color. It is a colorful movie.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. My reasoning for picking this film is not because it is maybe not the best example of cinematic excellence, but I think it does some excellent world building, maybe a little too quickly to its fault, but I just felt so enthralled visually. I'm a visual guy. And so when I see something that's very pretty or, you know, that catches my eye, I get really interested in it. And also, I like a unique story. I like a unique idea. And yeah, the idea for this film is pretty unique, I would say.
Yeah, that was actually like the first thing that I really noticed about the film that really jumped out at me was the opening sequence where they're on the International Space Station, and then as it continues through time, it just gets more and more components added to it. And it was a really, really fascinating way to set up the entire history of Alpha with no dialogue.
Right.
And honestly, I think that's such a good way. That's good storytelling, and I think that's good. That's good screenwriting, and it's good visual presentation. Like another good example of you know, telling a lot of just showing and not have just straight exposition dialogue. Star Trek Into Darkness, you know, another sci-fi movie that maybe didn't do so well, but the opening sequence of that, if you guys remember, it's in London. It's that Starfleet guy's daughter.
Yes.
She's dying, and zero dialogue, nothing but music and piano that just sets the tone. You know what's going on, you know his struggle, and you see the choices that he made without a single word being said. So, gaming author, I totally agree. It's a lot of awesome world building just by watching, and I think that's the film trying to play on its strong suit. Is like, hey, we're gonna show you a lot. Just strap in for a second and get ready to kind of, you know, start paying attention and see some weird things. And it's gonna be weird, but if you just stick with it, it's gonna make sense, and you're gonna fit right in real fast.
What was great too about that opening sequence, like y'all were talking about, is that they anchored it in our reality. So as weird as the movie gets, we can all relate to it because we all know about the International Space Station and how it builds from that. So that was really cool too, how he did that.
For sure.
Yeah, Dorseus, initial thoughts.
Yeah, initially, like, to go along with that opening, I always try to reel in my thoughts just a little bit, because I'm like, oh, no, think about the movie. But I'm like, man, the fact that we, like, shook hands with aliens for how long? For this opening, like, for, like, over 100 years worth of handshakes, you know? and it worked. I'm like, sweet. I want this reality.
Yeah, I want to meet a bunch of aliens that don't want to eat me and are interested in just sharing science or just, you know, better understanding of the universe. That'd be a pretty sweet future. I'd be open to it.
Heck yeah! And if I can have like just playing in the background, ground control to Major Tom.
Yeah.
If I can just have that playing in the background whenever that happens, I was cool with that opening.
That was A+ music choice right there.
Mm-hmm.
A+.
Absolutely.
Sometimes you gotta like take yourself not seriously enough to just do that. Like,
just
why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you?
And also too, I think it sets the tone a little bit as well. It's it's like, hey, there's going to be a little bit of fun here, but don't take it too seriously. It's almost like it knows, I think, what it is overall. I think the movie understands its identity a little bit.
Right.
But I'm sure we'll get into it when we really start breaking this sucker down. But I do believe there could have been some improvements, or at least like there could have been some simplifying. I think it's a good example of going maybe a little too big and maybe trying to get a little too, just getting a little too bloated. But overall, I enjoyed it. But before we start really getting into talking about this movie, because I think there's going to be a lot to talk about, I know you guys were just on not too long ago. So, Steelman, I'll start with you first. What have you been watching for the last, couple weeks or so?
Last couple weeks, I've been to the movies a couple times, which was fun. I saw just recently I saw Black Panther again.
Nice.
Which was a blast. My wife went with me the second time because she hadn't seen it, so that was fun to get to. I always enjoy watching those movies after you've already seen them, so your kind of expectations are already there, and you can just kind of sit and enjoy the film for its film's sake. So that was really fun. Loved it. And then I watched Tomb Raider. I think the week before, which I personally really enjoyed. I loved the video game. I played it actually later than everyone else did. I was catching up. So I played the video game maybe a year and a half ago. So I thought it was a pretty good middle ground between the video game and then also like the Angelina Jolie Tomb Raiders. So kind of it's interesting. I don't know if y'all have seen it yet, but
have not.
I heard several people say, or at least one review that I read that I agreed with, is that not the best movie ever made, but it left them wanting more. So they kind of like created the world a little bit from the video game, honoring the old movies, and then kind of set it up for another run. And Alicia Vikander does an amazing job. She definitely sells it, which I was not sure she could pull off or not, but did a great job. So.
Yeah, that was my reservation seeing the trailers for it. Was I think when she's in a still image, I think Alicia Vikander kind of looks the part, but I had maybe some reservations on her physical capability of the role. Mm-hmm. But I think that's also like just from a heavy influence from the video game versus what I was seeing on screen. But so in your opinion then, Steel, as far as video game movies go, they haven't necessarily done the best, or the reception has been pretty poor.
Right.
A lot of people like me, and I'm sure others, were hoping that this was hopefully going to be maybe the first one to break the mold. Kind of like, with Iron Man, and to a degree too, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, kind of bringing comic book movies into popular culture and being accepted and maybe seeing that shift. Do you think this movie did that?
I think it did in some ways. I think so. Here's the problem. I think with whenever you get anything like a video game or a movie that's based off a video game or off a book, you have these diehard purists of the source material that they want everything to be exactly that way, and then you've got another group that they want originality and they want something fresh, and so you got to try to find some middle ground. And I think this one did a little bit of that. So. It's basically the story of the video game, but they did some fun things to kind of go off of it and to just develop the characters a little bit better, which I think that's ultimately people are wanting a story and they're wanting to connect with the character and to see that world be developed. And I think they laid the foundation for it. The problem is they only have like 2 hours to do that. And so it's, when you play these video games, you're doing it for 10 and 20 hours. So it's hard to capture that. But I think they did a good effort, and like I said, I think they kind of laid the groundwork. So
that's good to hear.
To answer your question, not really answering your question.
Nice.
But
Dorseus, what have you been watching recently?
The most recent newest thing that I watched was Pacific Rim 2.
Ooh, I want to know a little bit about it.
Yeah. For me personally, I love it. Maybe not as much as the first,
Uh-huh.
but I will always have that reservation about anything being a sequel, because it's hard to like recapture that same spirit of me not knowing what Pacific Rim 1 was going to be. So
Right.
it's hard to like just do that a second time when I'm like, oh, there's kaiju, there's more giant mechs, and you have John Boyega. Okay, yeah, say no more. I will be
They kind
happy.
of doubled down on what they had.
Yeah, and what I will say without spoiling it for anybody in chat is that I think it did again with kind of like this is what anime would be like in live action, but they set up a framework that would work well to do another. So they used some characters in a way that would allow you to do so.
Okay.
And that was really exciting to see, because I'm like, yeah, give me more. Like that's basically what I had that feeling for Pacific Rim 2. Is like, yeah, okay, this was great. Now, could you like triple down, quadruple down? Like, could we like keep going? Like, just give me more. I will sit through like 4 hours of Pacific Rim if you make it. Like,
that was actually my biggest concern with the original Pacific Rim. Was I came out of the theater absolutely loving it.
Yeah.
But I was so worried it was never going to get a sequel and we were never going to get more of it, because I'm like, okay, every reason why I love this is because I'm already like, I am the bullseye for this film's target audience. And because of that, like, is anybody not in that target audience going to get on board with this film?
Right.
Because this is a very specific target you're aiming at.
Yes.
And
Right.
the fact that even if it didn't get traction here in the US, the fact that its international box office was so big that we did actually wind up getting a sequel.
yep.
I really do need to actually get off my butt and see Pacific Rim 2.
Do
I
it.
know
Do it.
I'm going to kick myself if I don't see it in theaters.
Yeah, I want to see it as well. I'm curious. I remember I think we saw it together.
We did an IMAX. It was amazing.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
was honestly a really cool spectacle. Like seeing these massive mechs, these massive kaiju, and just fighting all the time. Oh, it was so cool. Honestly, like there's nothing better than like I think it was a summer movie. I can't remember, but just like
Yeah.
seeing just things just smash into each other. It's like
Yeah, I think it came
you
out
felt like a little
around the
kid in
same
the
time.
sandbox, just smashing toys against each other.
Well, when they pick up the giant, freighter.
Yes.
The boat with the sword.
Use it as like a
boat
sword or a
bat.
baseball bat. Just
Yes.
Yep.
so good.
Oh,
We won't
so
tell you
that's-
about how we actually had swords, but here, use the ship.
Yeah.
I feel like, not to go off on too much of a tangent here, but I feel like that boat bat segment is like the perfect encapsulation of Pacific Rim as a whole.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, it's
Oh, yeah.
so ridiculous. Like, on the face of it, it's ridiculous.
Absolutely.
It's amazingly stupid.
hmm
But at the same time, it's just so much pure fun that you don't care. how
Yeah, you're like
stupid it
I'm
actually
fine with
is.
this. I'm cool with it. There might be people
Yeah.
on board. They might all be dead. That's fine. It was
Well,
a,
and
it was a
when
cool
they-
bat.
Did they call it the handshake or whatever, where the minds meld?
Oh
The-
yeah,
the
yeah,
drift-
yeah.
The
Like,
drift, the neural handshake.
Yeah,
yeah, that was
So
so
when-
cool.
When they explain that, I'm like, I'm not going to question the science. This is beautiful.
Exactly.
GLaDOS told me it worked, so it worked.
Absolutely.
Like,
What I thought was cool too, like with the neural handshake in Pacific Rim, was just the doctors, very like anime style characters brought to life. Just especially
Oh,
like
yeah.
the one that's like really spastic, and how much he's like fumbling over his own words, the way he talks. It's like, I've seen this cartoon character before. I've seen
Yes.
this guy. and
Yes.
then you have like the cool doctor, and it's like, this is it was so good. I loved it. I enjoyed Pacific Rim. It's a fun movie. It's fun. If you guys haven't seen it, I mean, find a way to check it out. It's good. It's good.
oh yeah.
Don't expect to have your mind blown, and think that you just saw like an Oscar-worthy film, but it is fun visually, and I think it's entertaining. It's entertaining. It's an entertaining film.
Well,
I
the
think there's
effects are definitely Oscar worthy.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, the effects are
Yes.
solid. They're very solid. And honestly, too, I think a clever use too of, I think a lot of people are like, oh, it's so dark. Why is everything so dark? Why is it raining? It helps sell visual effects a little bit better. Things that are bright tend to stand out and stick out like sore thumbs a little bit more. If it's darker, it tends to blend better. And so
Yeah,
that was a
for
lot of
sure.
the reasoning for the rain and the darkness in terms of like when things were fighting each other. So it was intentional.
Yeah,
It was
I love
intentional.
movies like that too because they remind us, it's good to have movies that are art, and Oscars and all that kind of stuff. But it's also good just to have movies for entertainment's sake. And
Absolutely.
let's not forget that.
And I
sure.
think that's a good point to bring up to kind of circle back to Valerian, is that I had a very similar reaction to Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets that I did to Pacific Rim, in the sense that
Mhm.
like it's by no means the perfect movie, but there's so much honest, heartfelt fun to it.
Mhm.
That
Yes.
even through some of the pretty glaring issues I had with it in terms of story development and character, it's again so much fun that I'm still along for the ride.
Mhm. 110%.
I completely agree.
Yep. Totally agree. So I've been watching too much. I mean, since the last one, having a baby changes things a lot. We have been working on our Marvel cinematic journey. We're trying to we're on the road to Infinity War in our household. So we actually watched Thor Ragnarok just this past
yes.
weekend.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was actually
Thor.
Steelman's first time to see it, as well as his wife and my father-in-law. And so
I wasn't able to do enough pamphlets so the revolution
Yes.
did really well.
Yes, everyone showed up. Oh, it was so good. I loved seeing that again. And honestly, I'm actually happy that I saw Ragnarok, because we're actually in terms of like release order, we're up to Civil War. Technically, this is happening concurrent with Civil War or not long after, in terms of like the timeline. So for me, I'm curious to see how Civil War feels now, having seen Ragnarok before it, in terms of, like, because I'm during the Accords and everything and all that, the guy that I think eventually he becomes Red Hulk, I think, in the comics, but
Yeah,
he's
he
in
Yeah, Thunderbolt Ross.
yeah, and so he's like, where's Hulk, where's Thor, if Russia or we misplace two nuclear warheads, I think some people would be a little concerned. And so it's like, this is what they've been doing.
Yep.
And so but that's where we are there. And we also just finished Jessica Jones, the second season of Jessica Jones today.
Nice.
Yeah, enjoyed
Yeah,
it.
I need to pick that back up. I've been doing my own. That's what I've been watching lately. Is I've been going back through the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I'm up to Captain America: Civil War.
Nice.
Actually, right? Or not
That's
Civil
great.
War. Winter Soldier.
Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're in
And,
phase 2.
Yeah, and it was kind of funny going back and watching the Marvel movies, and I think it's, again, kind of keeping Valerian a little bit relevant here. Watching the Thor movies again, 1 and 2 specifically, really kind of brought home for me the fact that we really do need to have movies that, even if they're not great, they're still just fun. Like, for me, they're Thor 1 and 2 both have a couple of really big problems, but at the same time, the bits of them that are good are so good that I'm down to rewatch those movies anytime.
Yep. Agree. Like, I know a lot of people kind of poo on the first Thor, but for me, I think with
Really good.
yeah, I know, I think it's excellent.
Of all the ones to poo on, it wouldn't be that one.
I know, seriously. I mean, Thor is a special place in our house. I mean, Mrs. McFly walked down the aisle to a Thor song. But a lot of people think it's not very great. A lot of people don't like it. But I think, with Kenneth Branagh being the director for it, a guy that has a very big theater background, I think brought a lot of like gravitas to his cast
And it
choices.
really shows.
Yeah, and you kind of need to do something with that, with more of a royal family or more of a medieval style culture,
Right.
that has like that kind of monarchical structure, and having people that are classically trained actors as your cornerstones, I think really kind of helps sell, like, yeah, these are regal people, these are royal, people that have been around, that have culture, there's legacy, and so that's what I've liked about the first Thor. I still think it's great. I mean, the Wild West showdown, maybe not so much.
Yeah, that's actually one of the parts where Thor, the first one, almost completely loses me because it's so stupid.
Yeah,
You don't want to like Wild West showdown with an unstoppable suit of armor. Like,
yeah, that's kind of that's where it started to fall apart just a little bit. But once we get back to Asgard for the ending, it's like, okay, fine,
yeah,
we're good.
Oh, it's normal again.
Yeah, it's like, well, let's just get back there. But yeah, I agree. I mean, I totally agree. It's great to have movies that are just fun. You don't need to have like, it's almost, think of it this way too. If you're really into food and you really like French food, it's very rich. It's very dense, flavorful food. If you eat that all the time,
You die.
You die. Yeah, you're just gonna have a heart attack and die.
Note to self: skip the French food.
Yeah, but it's delicious and it's wonderful and you love it, but you can't have it all the time. You know, sometimes you need that cheeseburger, or you need that piece of pizza. You know, sometimes even bad pizza can still be pretty good pizza because it's pizza. So and not to say that Valerian is like pizza or a cheeseburger, but I think it's a good example of you're not gonna see like something like Shape of Water, but visually it's not too different in terms of its structure, but it's maybe a little bit more playful and a little bit more out there.
Right.
But you can have balance, or you can have a full spectrum within sci-fi and still have really excellent stuff, but also stuff that's just fun, tastes good, it's great, I enjoy it. I think Valerian kind of fits that bill.
Yeah, for sure.
Totally.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
It's like it's like, to go with your food analogy, like Valerian is like my that I like go and stop for after I had that super fancy meal, which was like 2 bites.
Yep.
Like I need to have Valerian, otherwise I'm not gonna make it. I can't just survive off of everything else, because like, yeah, I love being intellectual at times, but I really like having fun. So
right.
And Valerian's like, hey, have some fun.
For sure.
Yeah, and it Valerian, I actually, when I first started watching it, and we got from the opening sequence to our introduction to the pearls, I guess is what they're called.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
That took me a while to figure out too. I was like, wait.
Yeah, and you're like, wait, what is this?
Name,
why do I want
we'll
this?
let that name sit there for a second. But the thing that I was actually almost laughing about, I'm watching their interactions, I'm observing their body language, their clothing style, and I'm like, is this how these characters are presented in the comics, or did Luc Besson not so subtly rip off the Na'vi from Avatar? Because there's a lot of similarities there, like their gesture with touching the foreheads.
I didn't even think about that. Yeah.
To be fair, I'm pretty
bit.
sure that I think the comic that it came from, is pretty old. Like,
yeah, that's what I've heard, which is why I didn't want to like completely go in on him for that, because I'm 99% certain that the source material predates Avatar, so there's a chance that James Cameron got his ideas from Valerian. But especially with they're touching the forehead and greeting, and the queen's dress, I guess.
yes.
Like it's like 90% accurate to the same thing in Avatar, and I'm watching this thinking, dude, this is really similar.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I just looked it up. It was first published in 1967. So definitely predates Avatar by a while. By a while. But also too, I mean, that's one of the cool things, about, creative mediums. It's a lot of borrowing. Nobody really like owns something. I mean, unless you like straight up, there's straight up ripping it off and then being inspired by. And who knows? I haven't read the comic, but it's a French graphic novel series.
Yes, I'm tempted to read it now. I was looking at how do I get a copy?
Yeah, I was actually at our comic shop not too long ago, and I was like, nice. I might grab that. I couldn't. I wanted to.
Well, and depending on how like you guys were saying, depending on how true they were to the source material, that would be really kind of cool, and maybe give it more depth that they were coming up with some of these kind of interesting ideas back in the 60s.
Right.
Yeah, which is also crazy to think too. Like somebody was thinking this far ahead, with like the International Space Station and stuff, in the late 60s, early 70s, and someone's already having this idea. It's like that's a pretty like, you're making a lot of assumptions and leaps about space travel technology and all that. It's like, that's just wild. Absolutely wild.
Yeah.
That's why I love sci-fi.
Yes.
They get to do that kind of stuff. They're
yes.
like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if, at one point somebody's like, hey, there's no such thing as a submarine yet. Yeah.
Exactly.
How many leagues can we make it go into the ocean?
Right.
Quite a bit.
Well, even like look at Star Trek, the communicator and now cell phones.
Right.
And we essentially have communicators in our pockets or on our hips all the time now. You know, something that somebody thought, yeah, that may never be a thing, but now it's everywhere. Everybody has one. It's nuts, you know, and eventually holograms are like, what? That'll never be a thing. And now we can go see Tupac walking around with Michael Jackson. And it's like, say, what? What's this? And so like, that's what's so cool about sci-fi. I think it's more like what sci-fi can do is I think it inspires science of the future. I think I mean, look at Elon Musk, you know, and everything that's going on with Tesla and things like that. You know, I think I saw an article somewhere. They were talking about, I think he's trying to tackle like public transit issues, you know, kind of like Minority Report style cars or shuttles that are fully automated, underground, runs on magnets or something like that, kind of like the mining cars in Black Panther, and like speed rail cars today too. And just seeing that visualization of it, it's like, holy crap, I want to live in that world. It's like, I want that now. I don't want to have to drive again. I'll sit and just, you know, let this thing take me places. That'd be great.
Yes.
And have like the like that gigantic interdimensional or multi-dimensional like shopping.
Man, I'm looking forward to talking about that. Oh my gosh.
Such a fun, trippy, interesting sequence to watch.
Yeah. All right.
It was very creative, and I loved that was some of the stuff, and even the concept itself, and then where he had his box inside, his hand was inside the world, but not the rest of his body. And I mean, they just have a lot of really cool ideas that you don't see a lot in other movies that makes it fun to watch.
And I love how they didn't really, and this is something that I've really grown to appreciate in all forms of fiction and storytelling, is when you trust the audience to connect the dots, where you don't we don't ever get an explanation for how like the actual physics or science behind some of these devices, where you just like, they tell you this is what it is, this is what it does, and here we'll actually activate it for you, and it's just enough where the audience can accept it and work with it without getting lost in the details.
Right. Exactly. Well, before we start getting, you know, too deep into it, we're going to go ahead and dive into the trailer here so we can start really, you know, getting into spoiler talk and just breaking this sucker down. So,
all right, let's do it.
If you guys have not seen Valerian, or you need a bit of a refresher, we got the trailer here for you.
Welcome to Alpha, the city of 1,000 planets. After centuries of peace and prosperity, an unknown force wants to destroy all we have created.
Agents Valerian and Laureline, you have less than 10 hours to find the threat and eliminate it.
Let's get to work.
History is on the march.
All right, guys, that is from Luc Besson's Valerian. Fantastic, fantastic movie that is just a visual feast. The storyline here is in century... I don't want to read Roman numerals. That's too much. The space station Alpha is a city where beings from different planets live together, exchanging their knowledge and culture. Peace is granted by a human force, including Major Valerian. Peace is granted by a human force, including Major Valerian and his partner, Sergeant Laureline. They are assigned by the defense minister to retrieve the last species of a converter. A species of converter. This is just straight garbage. We're gonna read this one instead. It's like, this person did not write English well.
That's not the official plot.
No.
synopsis.
All right, here we go. So, a dark force threatens Alpha, a vast metropolis and home to a species of 1,000 planets. Special operatives Valerian and Laureline must race to identify the marauding menace and safeguard not just Alpha, but the future of the universe. This is directed by Luc Besson and stars Dane DeHaan, Cara Delevingne, Clive Owen, Rihanna, Ethan Hawke, as well as a couple others as well. Fantastic movie, dudes. I enjoyed it. We've already been kind of rambling about it a little bit. But one of the things that I kind of wanted to get into was maybe one of the coolest scenes in this entire movie was the market. We were talking about that right before the trailer was the market. Now, to kind of set this up and tee this up, if you haven't seen this movie, come back later or listen to this a little bit. You know, this is
pause now.
Pause and come back later. But so if you're still here, so the way this market is so freaking cool. What an awesome idea, especially in current state of video games with VR culture and and especially with Ready Player One on the horizon.
Yes.
This idea that you can go to just this place, a random place where there's just nothing. It's just a desert with a fence. And you put on this headset, you put on this stuff that'll let you interact with the virtual world. And when you put it on, it's like New York stacked on top of Chicago, stacked on top of Beijing, stacked on top of like every major city in the world, just multi-layered on top of each other. That is just
a fantastic way to describe it.
Yes.
It is just wild. And all across the universe too, everybody is plugged in as well, sharing their stuff, buying goods, just it's just this melting pot of the known universe. And just seeing that, I just couldn't help but think, this is the coolest effing thing I've seen in a movie. Or at least one of the coolest ideas that I've seen visualized where I know what's going on and I'm not lost. It's like, I got it.
Right.
Yeah.
And
it's definitely
man,
top 3, honestly. If you had a gun to my head and make me choose, like, what's some of the coolest stuff you've seen in science fiction film, the market's probably top 3, because it's, like you said, it's such an enormously busy location, both in context and visually, and yet you never get lost. You're grounded enough in what's going on that you don't really lose track of who's where, in what dimension, with what device. And it's just a stunning segment of the film, and works on so many levels in ways that it probably shouldn't actually. And yet Luc Besson makes it work. Yeah. And I think one other thing I wanted to touch on real quick is your comment about melting pot. I think that's indicative of a lot of stuff in this movie, because the market scene felt like, when I was watching it, it felt like you took Firefly, like some of the locations from Firefly, you took Mos Eisley, and all these other like locations throughout all these other science fiction stories that we all know and love, and rolled them into one sequence. And again, it works on, I don't know how to describe it, but it just works in a way that I didn't expect.
Yes. And I think to follow you guys on that one, like, I if you guys already didn't tell, like, I'm along for the ride. All you have to tell me is like space, aliens, 2 characters that look like they're out of Mass Effect. I'm on board. So when I'm like, okay, I'm just kind of cruising along, we're enjoying it. I'm like, wait, there's a market? This is an empty desert. Like, like, where's the market? And then you finally get just the visual spectacle all at once. You're like, whoa, hold on. Like, that was like the reveal for that was incredible. And then you're just immediately sucked right in. You're like, okay, I'm about it. I will not judge you. I will reserve all judgment until I see what you do. That was amazing to me.
Yeah.
I agree with you guys 100%. And I think what was really cool too is that when you see this market in this world, you have these kind of goofy characters that are on some kind of a vacation buying a bunch of junk.
Yes.
You're like, wow, okay, well, this is one piece of this market, and then you've got these backroom deals going on in this black market selling, and it's all part of the same world. And it makes you think like, okay, this is just a sliver that I'm getting in this one little spot, and I want to know more. I want to go back to and see what other stories are happening in this market. So that was really cool. He kind of created an instant depth of the story that makes you feel like you've been a part of it for a long time.
Yeah, and kind of building on that too, just this idea of you just wanting to know more. Just the opening sequence of this movie, with all the different, with the International Space Station, and then just continuing to add another piece, upgrade this piece, upgrade this piece. More people from the world are coming up, and then we meet like the first intelligent life for the first time. You have the shaking of the hands, and then you just have this montage of just things getting added, new things coming in, new species coming in, new things like that. And it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And all I wanted to do was just go to these different quadrants of Alpha. It's like, I just want to look around. Can I just look around? Like, can we just pause for a second and just walk that way and just see what we see?
Yep.
Because it was just so neat.
I would love, and this movie didn't really perform at the box office, so we'll probably never see it, but I would love like an Oculus Rift HTC Vive like guided tour.
Oh my gosh.
I would be all about that.
That would be so cool. Someone's got to make that, even if it's in Minecraft pieces.
Somebody out there,
please
get on it.
Make our dreams come
true.
This,
please do.
Yes, please, please.
It's like the more slice of life that we beg for, that's how I think when they know they've done it right. Like if you can just like instantly like, well, I want to see that thing over there, and so it's almost like D&D in a fashion. Your DM's like, go this way. You're like, but what that thing over there?
It's like, but wait.
I had a lot of that in here with you guys. It's just like, yeah, but I want to like visit that underwater quadrant. I know I would probably drown, but I want to visit that quadrant. Like, let me go there.
Absolutely.
Well, and when you see Major Valerian and he's like, in the preview, and he's like running through all the quadrants and busting through walls, and he's shooting guns that create steps that he can walk on. You're like, wait, what? Well, how did that happen? Do that again. That was amazing. Just kind of this instant tour of all the stuff that they can do. And like you said earlier, they kind of let the viewer kind of accept it and not question it. And but they have this huge repertoire of just ability and cool things that can be done.
Yeah, that shot actually in the trailer was the specific thing where I saw that, and immediately I'm like, okay, that's a movie that I'm on board for.
Yes,
that's a movie that I want to see, and that's a movie that I want to see do well, because I feel like we don't get a lot, at least these days, we don't get a lot of cinematic science fiction anymore, and most of what we get these days is either Star Trek or Star Wars, and this is something so wildly different from that.
Yes.
That again, it's like, for all the movies, problems, which I'm sure we'll get into later, I'm really bummed. Number one, I'm really mad at myself that I didn't actually catch this in theaters now that I've seen it. And two, I'm kind of bummed that we're not going to get any more of this world, because I think there's so much here that's presented and not necessarily developed, that there is such fertile ground here for more narrative exploration. And I really need somebody to get on it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just looking up the budget for this movie was about 177 million, about the estimate. The gross was about 40.
Ooh.
Worldwide was 225. So worldwide, pretty good. So I mean, it cleared breaking even. So I wouldn't maybe fully root it out. I mean, kind of like, with Pacific Rim, if the international demand is there, maybe, I think honestly, China, I think is one of the most key box office metrics to check these days.
Yes.
Yeah, China saved Pacific Rim.
Yeah, and especially like the Transformers movies as well. It slays over there box office wise.
Mm-hmm.
And so even though it's kind
of to thank for that.
Yeah, exactly. But it's one of those things too where international markets, or at least the U.S. market isn't the the measuring stick anymore. If a movie's going to get a sequel or if their universe is going to keep going. So maybe.
What's also going to be interesting, I don't know if y'all have talked about this in these episodes before, but now with the advent of Movie Pass, enabling people to go to the movie theaters for like $10 a month and see unlimited movies almost. Yes. I wonder how that's going to affect, a lot of this. Because, me personally, I have to kind of pick and choose my movies. And then when I got Movie Pass, I'm like, hey, yeah, I'll go to the movies. I'll go see this. I don't have to be so choosy anymore.
You see one movie you like, everything else is gravy.
Right. But it's also interesting too, because I remember when this came out, like this is more, even though it's based off a graphic novel, it's still kind of an original story source. And so much of what we watch now is either a redo or part of a, even with Marvel, I love Marvel and there's nothing wrong with it. But, we're just kind of used to this flavor of cinema where we kind of know what to expect. And so I think people are just kind of hesitant to take a shot at something when they don't really know what's coming. And I think that's kind of why this probably didn't do as well.
Yeah, when I went back to school for to switch into media for my job, I had a digital video teacher that talked about the different eras of cinema. You go to like the beginnings, and then you have like the revival, the Renaissance, and then you have like eventually you reach like you get like a bunch of sequelitis, and then eventually you start to get to like parody, and then eventually you'll start to break through and then cycle back. And so it's very rare and that's just more like the mainstream, what's kind of happening. I think a good example of like, finally kind of reaching the end of it with horror movies as an example, because to me, this is the easiest example. Cabin in the Woods is a movie that I think is maybe one of the best examples of a genre kind of reaching its apex, and there's not much better you can do. Or as far as like original ideas, like this is kind of the end. You can comment on it, you can twist it on its head a little bit, but it still has its roots. But that's about as original as you can go, being able to still stay within the genre while commentating on it at the same time. I'm looking forward to that movie coming back around to streaming services, because that is a movie I would love to talk about, because one of the best turns, to steal a prestige term, that is one of the best turns I've ever seen in a movie. And I just remember my jaw dropped going, are you freaking kidding me? It's like peeling an orange. It's like, yep, this is how it's done. Oh my gosh, that's why the blonde is so stupid. That's why the jock is so dumb. That's why they go do this. It's ridiculous. And so
every one of those moments, I laughed hysterically.
Yeah,
because I'm like, it's happening.
Yeah, it's so happening. Good. And so with
I definitely need to actually get off my butt and watch that, because I grew up on horror movies, Disney movies and 80s slashers. That was my cinematic childhood.
It's so good. But anyways, back to the Valerian. Kind of talking about original concepts and things like that. If you guys haven't seen Fifth Element, it's another one directed by Luc Besson as well. It's a very creature-centric movie, and I almost think Fifth Element was a little ahead of its time in terms of the desired output and what they were wanting to do. And I feel like Valerian was Luc Besson kind of getting a chance to go back to what he wanted to do with Fifth Element, but with better technology and have better execution on creature building, world building, and being able just to get that right. And I don't know if that was his intention. I don't know if it was just a therapy thing to, be like, hey, I really wanted to get a chance to do this again, but the way that I wanted to see it realized. But this time though, maybe not as much on the practical side, more so on, post side with, visual effects and things like that versus practical. So in a way, you have two examples of Luc Besson going very practical and very computer heavy in terms of his characters and world building. And so it's kind of an interesting comparison in terms of what he has done before and then what he did by today's technological abilities.
Well, even on that note, one of the biggest things that surprised me with this movie was just how much of it was done practically.
Right.
Like it brought me back to Star Wars in a way where by a huge margin, my biggest gripe with the prequels, and particularly with Revenge of the Sith, was the fact that not just with the aliens, the sets were all green screen. Like none of the sets were made practically.
Maybe a couple pillars, and that was it.
And like it was. I think I may have brought this up before. I don't know. This is the example I always use when talking about this. But the opera scene in Revenge of the Sith, where Anakin and Palpatine are talking about Darth Plagueis, the chairs they are sitting on are not real.
It's like, how much did you need to replace? But that's also, I think, that's a director doubling down on believing a technology before it was ready to really replace everything. And also, I think another good example too of not having anybody around to tell him no. To tell him, well, maybe this instead. Maybe this would be better.
Yeah. That's an M. Night mistake. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. But I mean, I think an even bigger sense though. I mean, someone like George freaking Lucas, Indiana Jones, Star Wars. This guy does what he pleases.
But even then, though, when you look at your idea originally of oh well, this is my ability to do what I wanted originally with a different film. It's like if Luc Besson could go back in time and go talk to George before we have 5 different versions of A New Hope. This would be it, because it's look, I was able to do this. It looks good. It is passable and it's entertaining, and I didn't have to do it multiple times. This would be the example. It would be like Valerian. If you guys can go watch Fifth Element, watch this, you're oh yeah, you can see where he's improved or maybe changed his style of doing it. But it's don't change too much. You can probably hopefully have at least one person that can say, no, let him build the chair. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Also too, I think as far as with visual effects, my stance has always been the same on this. I think do everything practically that you can. Use visual effects to help sell what isn't there, and to help make what's practical look that much more real. I think one of the best examples of this is the very first Jurassic Park. When you look at that movie, so many dinosaurs are practical on the close-ups, and a lot of what was used to accentuate it were the very small biological things, like helping pupils look like they're supposed to look, helping skin just look a little bit better in terms of how it's reacting to rain or something else that was brought to it, or it just to make that one thing that definitely looks real and make it feel like it's a real part of the space. I mean, that's I think that's a good gold standard, because Jurassic Park, the very first one, still looks phenomenal. That's a movie that has stood the test of time visually. I think the only scene for me that kind of sticks out like a sore thumb, I think, is when you see the Brontosaurus for the first time.
Yeah.
Or the Brachiosaurus for the first time.
I'd agree with that.
Well, it's just the technology, at the time, I think, is the stage.
But at the rest of the film, though, for that time, for the 90s, it's this is amazing. I mean, especially when you compare it to some movies today, it's this movie is running circles around you and came out about 20 years before you did. And they did it with less.
And that's amazing. I mean, that's Spielberg, 101, because he took the Velociraptor scene, right? And you have the close-up of the foot.
And the clicking.
Yeah, and the clicking. Yeah. And that's all it took to scare the crap out of every kid in America,
Right.
He didn't have to get all, too tech with it.
Right, or I don't need to show the full raptor the entire scene. We can just show itty-bitty parts that are going to give you the scary thought of the boogeyman, but we don't need to show you the boogeyman just yet. Very much like Jaws, another Spielberg movie.
I think Jaws is where he actually picked that up, because the original plan for Jaws was to show the shark a lot more, and they couldn't do it because the shark wouldn't work 90% of the time.
Bruce can't make it. We can't do this. But yeah, and so the visual effects within Valerian, I think, practically, I think they sold what they needed to, especially with the set and the rooms and everything, not going full, prequel Star Wars where everything is replaced. I think what was there looked great. You know, I loved the set design and just the costumes, the tech. The tech seemed plausible. You know, nothing really seemed. I think one of the few things that seemed just insane is in the market again, the box that would let you basically kind of go through
Split
other dimensions. Yeah, basically like a legit portal gun, but it's like a portal box, I guess.
Right.
That was cool, but at the same time, it's like, okay, that seems like a bit of a stretch, but everything else seemed totally plausible.
Well, and that's something like much of a stretch as it may have been. I was willing to go along with it because it's so clearly necessary for the plot to function. Right. You're like, okay, I can stretch my suspension of disbelief just that little bit further because it's clear that they need this.
Right, exactly.
Because honestly, I'll go one step further. I would say that without the tech, the sort of the trans-dimensional tech, the whole idea of the market itself just falls apart.
Right.
Like, why bother going if you can't bring things back?
Worst shopping trip ever.
Yes.
Well, I think the grandpa would say it was the worst shopping trip.
Yeah, that's true.
They could bring things back.
Absolutely.
So can we get like a Marvel one-shot style short film just about those two characters?
Oh, that would be awesome.
that'd be hilarious.
That would be great.
But it has to also involve the fallen creature from the ship.
Yes, it does.
Oh my gosh, that'd be great. So I guess kind of going into, I don't know, some of the few things that I had issues with, and honestly, to me, it's only just a few. I wasn't bothered by too much from this film. The casting choice for Valerian and Valeraian and the dialogue felt more mature than who I was seeing it be delivered by. I felt like I was looking at very young people who maybe probably should have been played by much older people. And this maybe comes down to direction or something like that. But it almost felt like almost out of place. I don't know. Like the only way I could think of to describe it is the words that are coming out of your mouth sound like they should be somebody that's about maybe another 5-10 years older than you. Maybe.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. Like now that you say it, because I initially thought, I'm like, man, it's just something seems off to me more with Valerian.
Yeah.
But when you say like, the dialogues they are having, it's like, really? Because you're a major? Dude, you look like you just like are sleep deprived and forgot to pass muster as a cadet.
Yeah, it looks like you just need a couple Red Bulls to get through your college midterms.
It's like really? Okay.
I'm kind of two minds on that because the one review that I did read for Valerian just blasted Dane DeHaan and Cara Delevingne in their roles. So I in a way I went in with really low expectations for these characters.
Yeah.
And in that regard, I was actually pretty surprised that I was actually really on board for them and their relationship. And the only thing that really bugged me, which kind of speaks to the only real thing that really bugs me about Valerian overall, is I feel like there's a lot of history to both of these characters that we don't get in the movie, which explains why they are as young as they are and still in as high positions as they are. Because I very much got the sense that at the very least Valerian was a bit of a child military prodigy almost.
Yeah, kind of like
Ender's Game kind of.
Yeah, like a Ender Wiggin in Ender's Game or something like that. Someone that's incredibly talented that climbed fast.
The thing that irritates me though is I feel like whoever was writing this couldn't figure out, and maybe this is an issue of trying to adapt or maybe even condense a graphic novel, is they couldn't decide exactly what kind of hero they wanted Valerian to be. Because he seems to bounce through a couple of different types of characters over the course of the film, which almost lost me about halfway through. Because it's really hard for me to pin down exactly where it was, but there was such a wild shift in his character where he starts out as this kind of like almost Han Solo-ish wise ass.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking.
I'm so on board for so on board for that. But then he goes about halfway, 2/3 of the way through the film, he goes way straight-laced and serious, and I'm like, what?
Yeah, like,
I
hey,
don't-
I need you to get serious if we're gonna get together and get married. All right, done.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, and it's a bit
Too easy.
it's a bit of character tonal whiplash that I didn't quite get. I wasn't quite on board for, and it speaks to a level that there's just a few things about this film that I feel like they couldn't quite make their mind up on, and that they changed direction overall. I'd say about halfway through the movie, and then they kind of circle back again to where they started. And it was, for me, it was most notable with Dane DeHaan and his character, because Lorelai stayed really consistent throughout the film, and
I've never felt sorry for another character more.
Oh my
I,
God.
I agree with kind of what y'all are saying. The thing, I didn't even pick up on the fact that he was having kind of almost identity issues with how they were kind of portraying him. But what I got a little bit lost on is that they were working really hard to sell the relationship between the two of them, and it just felt either too forced or just kind of campy. But I thought maybe that's on purpose at the same time, you know. But
oh, did I lose you?
Oh,
genre.
there he is.
Yep, sorry. I just didn't know if that was maybe part of the genre that they were just trying to play into that, just making a very cheesy, kind of campy relationship. Or what are y'all's thoughts on that?
I think this is probably one of the more reasons why I was on board for Dane DeHaan's character as he's initially presented, is that it is kind of a thing of the genre to have this like super hot shot, talks the talk but can actually walk the walk type of character who thinks he can kind of get away with murder with, you know, his relationships.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I was totally on board for his being like this cocky, you want me, we're gonna get married and we're gonna have a bunch of kids and it's gonna be great. Like, I was totally on board for that at first. And then he goes from like 0 to 100 instantly, from acting like saying this but not really backing it up with action,
Yes.
Right.
to suddenly not saying it as much but then backing it up with all the action. And it's like, dude, are you even the same guy? Like, what what memo did I miss?
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's part of just, I think this is a good example maybe of so much source material trying to get crammed in here because we want to make this into a franchise, that I think a lot of what would have been growth for Valerian and the relationship that he had with everybody else maybe could have been stretched out over maybe a film or two. And I feel like we ended up making that leapfrog jump that maybe was intended to happen over a series of other events, but for the sake of getting this in one shot, we've got to have him just, grow up a little bit quickly. And I think that kind of hurt it as well. And I think that's one of my bigger gripes with this movie is I loved what I got to see. I loved the world. I want to go back. I want to see it again. I want to see just everything that's going on with Alpha. Just because of the nature of it, it lends itself to a very Rick and Morty style, issue where your limit on what you can have in this world is kind of up to what you can think of, which is a great playground in terms of the way the rules are set up. The way it's structured is like you have infinite possibilities here, which is fantastic. I would imagine for a writer is like, hey, this is kind of your rules. They're very basic, but you essentially get full creative freedom here to kind of make a species and just kind of just go with it.
Oh yeah, and I could go to town in a world like Valerian. Like you give me the keys to that kingdom, and I'm not leaving for a good long while.
Yeah,
there's so many different toys I could play with in that sandbox.
Absolutely. And so it was, I think that's my biggest criticism of the movie is just a little too bloated, a little too much trying to squeeze into, just a few hours.
One final thing that I want to throw out there though is that as much as I rag on the writing of Valerian specifically, I actually think that Dane DeHaan and Cara Delevingne, I actually really like their chemistry together when the script let it work. Like that opening scene with them on the beach, sort of wrestling with each other over the drinks and arguing over who's gonna do what.
That felt
I
authentic.
love that scene, and like they had such great chemistry there,
Mhm.
and the script let them have it. It let that work. And then you have other bits in the movie, and again, the throne room fight sequence was another great scene where I felt like they had this really great chemistry after Valerian's kind of, jumped ahead 5 years in his maturity level.
Yes.
I really enjoyed that bit as well.
Mhm.
And to your point, Cap, about wanting to see more of the world, one of the things that especially having watched Altered Carbon, which I have a whole string of really strong opinions on, but after watching Altered Carbon on Netflix, when I got to the end of the movie, I actually got a little bit mad that this didn't come out in time to be like a Netflix show.
Yeah.
Altered Carbon has the same kind of like high futuristic style with effects that are good enough to support it.
Mhm.
And you also get the same kind of it gives you that much more time to play around with the world, because kind of back to what I was saying earlier, about halfway, 2/3 of the way through the film, it feels like if this were a Netflix series, there's about 5 or 6 episodes that got cut so they could turn this into a movie instead of a show.
Yeah, it's almost like, oh crap, we ran out of budget. Well, we're just gonna turn this into something else.
So yeah, I don't know if it'll ever be in the cards, but if Luc Besson ever wants to come back to this world, dude, call up Netflix.
Please
bring this to Netflix. Actually, I would love to see this as a Netflix show.
Totally. One of the things I thought was kind of, I don't know, it almost felt maybe a little bit too tropey, but Clive Owen's character as the bad guy. I love Clive Owen.
Yeah.
I think he's a fantastic actor, especially Children of Men. That's one of my favorite movies. I love Children of Men. But it almost felt just a little bit, it's a overdone kind of thing. Big guy in charge wants to cover stuff up. It kind of resurfaces, and now we have to deal with it.
And I think that still could have worked for Valerian, but that almost more than Valerian as a character, I think is the biggest victim of how bloated this film is, because it's that storyline that explains why the opening sequence with the pearls is important, but that gets left on the floor and in the shadows for so long.
You almost forget
that when it comes back around, it's a bit blindsiding, because you feel like the movie between those two sequences has been telling a completely different story.
Yes, I agree with that point, because I knew it, but didn't know how to connect it at that point. When you get that opening sequence, you're like, this is a human problem.
Yeah.
Like you immediately know, oh, great, we're not so good.
Yeah,
like we screwed up.
Yeah, like
but
the ships are falling down. I knew immediately, okay, this right here is the central conflict of the film.
Right.
It's just you don't actually, the film doesn't tell you that itself until like 2/3 of the way through the film.
Right. You're like, oh wait, we had this whole problem we were dealing with. Oh, okay. And I feel like they also had potential, besides like accelerating maybe the tonal change Valerian. Like you have the idea that, okay, if you're gonna play it suddenly very straight laced, then maybe you have almost the point where you could have them not be as naive. If you've like shot up through the ranks, you're a major, you're like a special agent, not even just a major.
Yeah.
So you really get what's going on. Then maybe you should have some issues almost in the way that like Cap does in Winter Soldier. Like, oh God, SHIELD and all this stuff is what I thought it was. It should be like Valerian should be like, oh God, the commander is not the straight-laced guy that I really thought it was.
Yeah.
What are we really doing? And you get a little bit of that with Lorelei towards the end. It's like, no, you're not actually choosing to do the right thing. Like you're trying to be straight-laced, but that's not the actual option you need to choose. And it's like, well, could we have played that a little harder?
Yeah, it's almost like, you know, there should be a little bit more distress with something when, you know, your convictions or like the structure of your world starts to fall down. Somebody should maybe kind of be a little bit more distressed.
Right.
Yeah, there should be a little bit more something there. I thought honestly Rihanna's character I thought was quite fun.
Yeah, I was. Oof. I love Rihanna. I know I'm having like a really like negative on the face of it reaction.
No, that's fine.
I really loved Rihanna's character. Like, I love the way they presented her. I love the way they did the reveal of her true nature. I loved her contribution in the throne room fight.
Yes, so good.
I was pissed with what happened coming out of the junk pile.
Yes.
Like, I just,
yes.
I was so mad. Reaction. It's like, okay, number one, this character hasn't been around long enough for killing them off to really hit home. And at the same time, I was really angry that they did it because I'm like, no, this character is too cool. This character is too cool to be a one-trick pony like this.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I was secretly hoping that they were gonna somehow take her along with them, and this could have been like, hey, this will be like your third character if you do another Valerian.
Exactly.
Yeah, basically like their Chewbacca.
Right. And it's like, oh yeah, so you know Valerian how you look. She's gonna tell you so every time. So every time you mess with Lorelai, she's gonna know.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be an awesome dynamic. And then it's like, or we could turn you into sand.
Yep.
Great.
Yeah.
Really mad about it.
Yeah, I wonder if that was maybe that was just in the source material and they were just kind of hammering through it or something. Because I agree with you. It's like she was around long enough to care, but not enough to be devastated when she was gone. Other than the fact that you still wanted her to be a part of the show, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Baby Rice has a good point up here. It's a Luc Besson film. The blue singer ladies die.
Yeah, sad but true. Sad but true.
Yes,
oh man,
Liara for sure.
Yeah.
So I have a question.
Sure.
What was for y'all's side? What was your favorite like creature that he created?
Ooh.
Individual creature.
You know what? I'll come out and say it first. Bubble.
There you go. Honestly, I liked just the entire race that we get in the opening film. You know, I mean, it's very akin to Avatar, the Pearl people, and all that. I can't remember what they were specifically called.
The pearls.
Yeah, they called them pearls.
Okay, but like just their
original.
Yeah, but just like the way that they're so educated, and you know when they're exiled on that ship, essentially, you know when their whole world crumbles and they kind of are on this arc, for lack of better comparison, and they reverse engineer how to fix everything, and they just survive on it. It's a very intelligent people, but to a prejudiced eye, you're gonna say, these people don't know what they're doing. They got spears and sticks and are barely clothed. They're almost all naked. And but at the same time, it's like these are some of the most intelligent beings in the universe. They just totally picked everything up and hot-wired this spaceship to work to where they could live on it and continue the existence of their people. And also we're able to create a buffer inside a space station with an infinite number of other species and not be detected.
Right.
And so they were, I think, my favorite to see visually, because I thought it was unique. It was cool coloring. It was, very Pearl-esque in the purples and white and just the, light blues, very much like a pearl, and how that also translated to just the actual pearls, being, the essence of their, survival and giving back to the planet, but also just in terms of their skin tone as well, and just kind of how they really embraced that with the design too.
Yep.
Yes.
Honestly, I agree 110% with everything you said. The only reason why they're not my favorite as well is because my first impression was so strong of Avatar.
Yeah.
That I couldn't, like, they're number 2 for me. Like, if I hadn't seen Avatar, then yeah, number 1 far and away. But it's just like, for me personally, I can't get over, coincidental or not, I can't get over the similarities.
Yeah, totally understandable.
Yeah, and I think to follow, I'm with you, Cap. Like the pearls, because it's just like visually stunning looking aliens. I'm like, you look like a pearl. I will have to get over the fact that humanity could not come up with a better name.
Yeah.
I'm
although
sure
we are dumb enough, I think we would pick something like that.
Like, well, what's it look like? A pearl. Okay, we're going with that. But yeah, for the same reasons, just like that opening sequence with the princess in this case, and that slice of life of like, this is what it means to be part of their culture and giving back and literally harvesting pearls, and like I want to be there. Like,
Yeah.
Just leave me there. I'll just watch. I won't even do anything. I just want to check it out, and I'll maybe like try to find a way before the spaceships crash. But I would totally have them as my top alien for this movie.
So for me, I loved the throne people, or whatever you call them. I don't know.
Yes.
They were ridiculous in how they looked, but what I loved is how hilarious that whole sequence was, and how much you learn about them with complete nonverbal communication, right? Their eyes and how goofy they are. It was almost like a Muppet type interaction with how that was all going. But I thought it was hilarious. And the king, he's like, doing his whole thing, and he has that kind of cigar cutter thing, and I'm like, oh my god.
Yeah. Oh
that
man.
was like when I saw that.
Love
coming,
that.
I'm like, oh god.
Yeah, the
That's
ridiculously
nasty.
sized hat makes sense.
Yeah, I loved the one of those monsters that was trying to get Laureline dressed up, and it was just coming. And it was like a giant puppy dog, just like, yeah, yes, you wear this, and it was so innocent and just ridiculous at the same time. It was so funny. And then when they roar, though, it's like, oh.
Yeah, it takes you back a little bit. But the SteelManBat, what you were saying earlier about the Muppets, I didn't actually put the dots together until you said that. But that whole throne room sequence really reminds me of Jim Henson.
Fraggle Rock.
Just I was watching that and I'm thinking, like, this reminds me of something. I feel like I've seen it somewhere before, and for whatever reason, it made me think of the Dark Crystal.
Oh yes.
Oh my gosh. Talk about a throwback, Dark Crystal.
That's funny.
Yeah, I could totally see that. Gosh, I need to re-watch Dark Crystal.
So do I.
Haven't seen that in forever. Forever. But yeah, I mean, other than that, I mean, I thought the soundtrack was pretty solid. But I think we're all kind of in agreement that, some of the biggest flaws in this movie were a lot of trying to cover a lot of ground almost a little bit too quickly. But visually, I think we were all pretty happy with what we got to see in terms of all the different, creatures, the world building and stuff. I mean,
yes, Hollywood science fiction absolutely needs more of this stuff.
Oh yeah,
for sure.
And, to double down on the visuals, I can't name him by name because I don't want to out people on the internet because that gets back to you. But I know somebody that got to work on said film.
Oh, cool.
And
Nice.
I'm very happy to see that their ability to draw spaceships came in handy because I love the visual design of all the ships in the film.
Oh, very cool.
It's like, can't have space without really good spaceships.
No,
yeah,
you can't.
absolutely.
You really can't.
Yeah, like, and that's the other thing too, that, aside from the visuals too, the tech was so unique. They were just so fun. And honestly too, I agree, and I'm curious, what was left on the cutting room floor. Baby Rice was saying in chat, I have a feeling, I wonder what a director's cut of this film would be like. Kind of like, with Blade Runner, but
Right.
How much was left out that maybe could have filled a lot of what we feel are fast transitions or fast character growth that maybe could have given us, the experience for those people that we needed, but we unfortunately didn't get to see in our theatrical cut, as the audience in the end. Maybe that stuff was shot, maybe it was done, but ultimately it was removed for the sake of time or for the sake of just hitting a certain, deadline or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I would absolutely be down for a Lord of the Rings style extended cut.
Goodness.
Oh yes, give me an extra
movie.
2 hours.
Yeah.
Sure, I'll do it.
Yes,
Why not?
absolutely.
Yep.
And that's honestly like one of my biggest, like, hearing that, anytime a movie gets made and they say that, we had to cut these scenes for time, breaks my heart
Mm-hmm.
because as someone who's grown up with attention deficit disorder, I find it irritating, for lack of a better word, that, you know, I can struggle to pay attention to a lot. Like, it takes a lot to get me to focus on any one thing for a greatly extended period of time.
Yeah.
So when I hear that people who do not have attention deficit disorder can't be bothered to sit through, you know, 2.5 hours of film or more than that for a better story, it's like it hits a nerve that I don't know how to articulate. But it's like,
Sure.
you mean to tell me that I, as someone who loves storytelling and has real struggles maintaining focus on things, I lost out on a great story because someone who can focus for extended periods of time just doesn't want to?
Yeah, that kind of comes down to like our comparison a little bit earlier too, with, you know, different kinds of food and also different kinds of film as well. You know, I think you have you know, you have your moviegoer that kind of just doesn't care, and is just in it just for whatever. They're there for, you know, their hour and a half, you know, traditional break. And then, you know, you have people that, you know, are like us, and other people that are movie fans too, that, you know, we're willing to sit there for 2.5 hours if you take me on a good journey. You know, we're willing to give it a shot.
Yeah.
So, but yeah.
Thus far, the only movie that I've seen that has been potentially too long, even for me, was the extended cut of Return to the King. Like that movie's feathering on like 5 hours long, and I'm
Don't
like,
care. Don't care. I need that. I need that last hour to cry. I need it every time. Like, I need to say goodbye to everybody.
5 times.
Yep.
Yes.
Like, maybe I need to watch it again, but I remember when the extended cut first came out of Return to the King, and I finally watched it. Even I got to a point where I'm like, "Is it over yet?"
Yeah.
I kind of want to do some other things with my day.
It's like, I need to pee. Let's wrap this up here. I need to use the bathroom, please. Let's go. But yeah. But yeah, that's also too. It's a good example. You know, it is a fine line that you have to walk with movies. You know, you don't want to overstay your welcome. You do want to leave people. I guess maybe leaving them wanting more maybe isn't the best goal to shoot for every time. I would say make an experience that's gonna leave the theater with everybody else. You know, the conversation's gonna keep going, and I think that's a movie that has done something right. You know, kind of like with this movie as well. You know, this movie leaves a lot to talk about, and I think that's kind of a good thing. You know, a lot of us are gamers, and a lot of us, you know, have roots in playing a game called Destiny. A game that we all want more story of, but because there's a lot of good bones, we enjoy talking about it. And you know, I think Valerian and, you know, Destiny could maybe share some similar experiences in the sense that there's a lot going on, but, you know, maybe we were left, you know, wanting, you know, either a better structure or maybe a different structure of it at the same time.
The little, I don't know if addendum is the right word, but the way that I would phrase it was, leave me wanting more because I enjoyed what I got that much, not because I feel like things were left out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Agreed.
You know, it's to kind of tie it back to gaming, you know, don't cut out the last 2 levels of a video game so you can sell them as DLC.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like,
dang it, EA.
Just give it to me. Give it to me. Well, dudes, unless you guys have any final thoughts, I think that might do it for us on Valerian. What you got, Gaming Author?
Brought up a point about the ship's AI.
Yeah, I wanted to comment on that too.
That actually felt really redundant to me. Like that whole section where they're flying through and the ship's AI is
that big exposition dump.
That whole scene really, that was the first time the movie almost lost me, was because it's like, these are 2 people who have been working on this station for probably their whole lives.
They probably know what's going on.
They know all this.
They
and
should.
It's one of those situations where you really need an audience identifier character who hasn't maybe been to Alpha, who doesn't know Alpha, and they're telling all of this information that they already know to them, and maybe to tie it back to the central conflict a little bit, maybe they found another pearl, or one of the pearls that was in the market gets on their ship somehow to follow the converter.
Or
And-
maybe as you're flying in, they're going through audio logs or video logs of
Right.
reports that are happening, like, hey, you know, there's this weird thing happening, you know, on these certain sections of Alpha, you know,
Mhm.
or things like that. Like, there's different ways to give us some exposition, but can keep us moving along, but also give us time too to understand how everybody thinks. You know,
Right.
give us some time to, you know, do some character building here and world building. You know, kind of kill two birds with one stone here. That
Yeah.
gives you a chance to maybe also interact with other people that are, you know, in that same, you know, that same force that are on Alpha, you know, getting a better chance to maybe get to know Clive Owen's character a little bit more.
Right.
Or, oh gosh, can't remember his name, but it was either the sergeant or the other general that was
The
on
general?
the, yeah, was on the
Yeah,
station with the red
general.
hair.
Yeah.
Yeah, that guy. You know, you could have this guy delivering, you know, you know, this is what's happened since you've been gone. This is the reports, you know, for the day. You know, we're having some issues with such and such. You know,
Nailed it.
like, yeah,
Right. We could rewrite Valerian. Oh my
absolutely.
God.
Luke Besson, I'm not busy. I could do this for you. We could do this for you totally.
Yeah, I'd do it pro bono.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
If it meant that I get the perfect version of this film, absolutely.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be payment enough for me.
Absolutely. Well, all right, dudes. I think that's gonna do it for us on another wonderful episode of AV Club. I appreciate gaming author Dorseus and SteelManBat. Thank you guys so much for coming back out.
No, thanks for having
Oh,
me.
of course.
Love
Thank
it,
you for having
man.
me
Love
again.
it.
Yeah, it was great having you guys back on. It's always fun to just talk movies with you guys. It's so fun. I enjoy it a whole bunch. But
Likewise.
before we close out, where can we find all of you wonderful people on the internet if you want to be found? Gaming author, where can we find you?
You can find me right here on Twitch at /TheGamingAuthor, twitch.tv/TheGamingAuthor. I'm on Twitter at TheGamingAuthor, and I also have my own website where I do blog posts about my writing and other things going on in that nature. I have a couple short stories posted up there. It's quillsandcontrollers.wordpress.com. I don't know if I can like put that in chat or include it somewhere else.
Sure, I'll make
I know
sure
it's a bit of a
everything makes it to
mouthful.
the description so that it gets
Yeah.
tagged in all the podcast stuff.
Yeah, because I know Quills and Controllers is a bit of a mouthful, but you know, I like it. I like it kind of as a website name and as a brand because it ties my writing in with my gaming.
Totally.
Which, you know, being the gaming author, you know, it's kind of
There
important
you
to
go.
make sure those things are very clearly tied together.
I dig it. I like the dual purpose. Smart, so smart. Dorseus, where can we find you, man?
You can also find me here on. And then you can also find me on Twitter at Dorseus.
Oh, I think we
nice.
lost you in the first part.
No! You can find me here on Twitch at twitch.tv/Dorseus.
Awesome, good deal. And Steelman, I guess we could find you lurking in chat, right? Unless you're going to start broadcasting sometime soon, right?
That's exactly right. I'm a follower who loves to lurk.
Very cool.
But
man.
yeah.
Yeah, Twitch
Awesome.
wouldn't be able to survive without its lurkers.
Yeah, lurk is love,
right.
lurk is life, man. And guys, I'm CaptainMcFly. You can find me here on this channel at CaptainMcFly. You can also find me on Twitter at CaptainMcFlyTV. You can also find me on YouTube as well. And you can find this podcast on all major podcast services, so iTunes, Google Play, Anchor. Looking at potentially pushing out to Podbean pretty soon. Just need to look at how to do all that good stuff. If you can, leave a review. Let us know what you think. Even if you give us 1 star, tell us why. That way we can keep making changes here. And if you also would like to email some feedback, you can send it to me at CaptainMcFlyTV@gmail.com. And we are going to jump into playing a little bit of Monster Hunter a little bit later. So if you do listen to this on a podcast service and you like watching live stuff in video games and things like that, or you want to catch it live, you can. You can join us here in chat and we could chit-chat about the movies and also play some games together. And as well as joining these other fine gentlemen as well. So we will be back again with a new movie coming up. Not quite sure what it's going to be. I need to see what's coming and going to Netflix and Prime. So keep your eyes peeled on Twitter for that announcement. But until next time, we'll see you guys later.
Bye.
Peace.
See ya.